Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast and YouTube video with me, Johnny Pardo. So apologies this week, I haven't been putting episodes out. My apologies for that on my schedule, but we'll be back with the full load next week. So don't worry about that. So today I have a very special guest on the show. So I have Jo Emerson. Hello, Jo.
Hello, Johnny. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you as well. So Jo, just to introduce Jo before she can do an introduction on herself as well. So Jo is an award-winning confidence coach and human behavior expert. She's also the author of her fantastic book that I've had the honor of reading, Flying for Beginners. And she's also an online course creator. So Jo works in one-to-ones, but she also works in group environments and has presented to a number of global businesses. In addition, she's appeared on shows such as BBC Radio 4 and Channel 5, and she's frequently been appearing on national press. I've also personally worked with Jo, and she's particularly helped me work with my confidence and overcome certain limiting beliefs. So I value Jo coming onto the podcast and to give everyone even more value. So thank you once again, Jo.
Oh, that's a nice intro, Johnny. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've kind of done a little bit of an introduction there and just kind of giving people an insight. So if you could just give us a little bit of a intro into actually your background and how you got into this area of confidence coaching and human behavior.
Yeah, well, it goes back a while, actually. It goes back about a decade. I went through a major life change about 10 years ago. I had been diagnosed with breast cancer myself, and I'd lost a friend to suicide. And facing mortality in such a kind of stark way, I mean, those two things happen within a couple of weeks of each other. I don't know, they kind of woke me up. I think they shocked me out of this sort of slumber I'd been in. And I realized I had to make some quite big life changes. And at the end of all of that, I kind of found myself as a single parent, my choice, with 3 small children, and this sort of legacy of living in fear kind of behind me, and sort of living a life that I thought other people wanted me to live. And it was something about the diagnosis and Andy's death that, I don't know, I could just see all of that more clearly. And I entered a time of therapy myself, and I became absolutely fascinated by change, about how we change mentally, how we change our thoughts and how that starts to kind of manifest in our lives. And during that time, I was Googling some of the terms that my therapist was using, and I stumbled across Tony Robbins working online. Now, I know you know Tony Robbins, you've done some work with him.
He's in my head every day.
The man's amazing. He's total Marmite. I love Marmite. I love Tony Robbins. I found him completely inspiring. I'd love to meet him one day and just shake his hand and say thank you for my career, because I watched him working online and just thought, I've got to learn how to do that. That's amazing. And I don't know, it was a bit like falling in love. I just thought, I know I can do this. I know I'll have an impact. So I really quickly ended up on a coaching course and another coaching course and another coaching course. And throughout that process, I noticed I was feeling increasingly confident myself. And all my practice clients were also saying, we feel so much more confident having worked with you. Like, they had other things they'd achieved that were all different, but the common denominator with my clients was they felt more confident, more able for their lives. And I thought, I'm onto something here. And so I decided to specialize in confidence. And I mean, it just went bananas, Johnny. I haven't stopped since. It's about, I just love releasing people into the truest version of who they are, rather than this thing we're encouraged to present to the world that's never authentic. So I've been really lucky to find work I really love and really passionate about, and that I'm able to do. And of course, I'm a mum first, and this work I do, I'm able to wrap around my family, and that's been really important to me. Even if I'm stood in front of 25 people on some corporate workshop I'm running, I will say to them all, I'm a mum first, and then I do all of this, because I'm a human being at the end of the day who's just found a solution for what was going on in her head and wanted to share it.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I can totally relate to some of the things about how great it is to see someone's mindset shift from a place of, I don't believe in myself, to suddenly, yeah, I'm excited about things as well. And that's very rewarding in itself. So when you got into this whole, the whole area of confidence, and you kind of just went, oh, this is really fascinating, I could work in this and I'm really enjoying this. Did it give you a feeling of energy like you perhaps hadn't experienced before?
Oh yeah, completely. To be honest, coaching in general gave me that feeling. Training as a coach, working as a coach. You know, I'd had a great career before. I'd been a BBC journalist. I'd then gone into PR and marketing, and you know, I'd been good at those, and they were good jobs, but they didn't light me up. Coaching has lighted me up. I don't know what the right word is there. And that's the thing. I think it's so important to be working in something that you are really passionate about, because it gives you energy that you can then give to the work, and it becomes this like reciprocal process. Whereas, you know, work that's really draining of our energy, you're not bringing your best self with that. You know, again, that's, you know, I've had to learn to get quite boundaried about how many people I coach a week as well, because otherwise, you know, the energy can drop. I've had to be bounded about taking breaks, because, you know, I want to do this and do this with energy. And it absolutely is that most of the time. If I notice I'm getting tired, it's probably because I've, you know, maybe overcoached or not taken enough of a break. And so, yes, it gives me energy, but I've had to learn to put my own needs in there as well. I think us coaches can be, you know, wanting to charge out and rescue everyone and fix the world. And, you know, it is a balance. It's a balance for sure.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that. And myself, when I've worked with people, I'm a bit of an overworker, so I'm a bit.
Are you really, Johnny?
Sometimes, yeah, you know me. So I sometimes have to pull myself back a little bit, but so I totally relate to what you're saying. There's a couple of things I particularly picked out there from what you're saying for people. There's one, this element of self-awareness in that, okay, my energy is perhaps dropping. I need to step back of all this work I'm doing and look after myself a little bit. And I think that's very important for people to hear, because self-awareness helps you connect with yourself a little bit more. And if you're neglecting how you're feeling, then that's not going to help your feelings. So that was a really great message, definitely, for that. And also the other thing, as we were kind of touching on, I think you said, was about the energy you're getting from it, but how good you felt. And I think that's really important for people as part of your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself, to be doing things that you may find fun. Now, sometimes we might be in a job where, we do need to, you know, realistically, we do need to pay the bills, but we could be working towards something we really want to do. So that's a really, really good, important point as well. So thank you for sharing.
That's all right. You know, I've just nearly finished my second book, and there's a chapter in there on self-love, and I've called it the practice of self-love brackets joy, because actually self-love is about finding things, or one of the parts of self-love is about doing things that bring us joy. If we're joyful, it changes everything.
Absolutely.
You know, it's so important. We can work and work and work, and it's like, well, what for? You've just missed today because you've just been working for tomorrow. Like, there has to be joy and balance in every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's specific for you, I guess you'd say as well. Like, it's not what you should think is fun for you, it's what is fun for you as a person. So for me, it's like, I'm a bit weird. I like reading books and then making videos and podcasts, whilst other people are, oh no. But you know, it's relevant.
They want to go and dig the garden.
Going for a run, other people hate that, but it varies. What's joy for you is really important. So and
that changes over your life as well, of course. That evolves and changes all the time. We're not we're not robots. We're ever evolving human beings And so what brought me joy in my 20s, you know, I'm 40, I'm nearly 50, I'm 50 in 18 months time. What brought me joy in my 20s isn't necessarily what brings me joy now. There are some common denominators like reading books. I've always been a bookworm. But there are many things now that bring me joy that I would have thought were completely lame in my 20s. So we have to be aware that we're changing as well, and, you know, to give ourselves a bit of slack on that. It's okay.
That is a very great point, Jo, and that's something I was forgetting about. So you might like playing your PlayStation or video games when you're a kid, but it's not relevant for you anymore. While some people do like playing in their 20s, or I've just hit 30, so like playing in your 30s or whatever. But it varies like that. So yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, thanks for that, Jo. So the next thing I wanted to kind of touch on was across some of your work and all the people you worked with and some of these businesses you presented to and talked through, no doubt the value they're getting. We often have limited, and I've been doing a lot of Tony Robbins, as you're touching on earlier.
I'm a bit jealous.
UPW, 2 of them this year, so I did one last year. But he talks about this a lot, but your beliefs are kind of like everything that drives you a lot. There's obviously lots of things, but limiting beliefs sometimes aren't always conscious to us, or certainly not like the deep-rooted bit of it. Now, what are some of the limiting beliefs you've experienced, or they're going to vary, but what's some of the most common limiting beliefs you found people experience?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, everything starts in our minds. It all starts in here. And so, you know, I suppose the overarching limiting belief is I can't. And the antidote to that is you can. But, you know, if you think you can't, you're either going to go at something with low energy or not bother at all. If you think you can, you'll find a way. So, you know, I learned that one years ago. But I suppose there are a few kind of frequent visitors, frequent limiting beliefs that I deal with my stock in trade, I suppose. One would be I'm not good enough. Like a core belief. If someone thinks I'm not good enough, like, I mean, that will cause a person to feel like they're in competition with everyone else who is good enough all the time. It's a really destabilizing limiting belief, often rooted in some kind of childhood trauma or neglect. It needs dealing with, that one, because it can cause all kinds of toxic, wonky behaviors. Another limiting belief I encounter a lot is the belief that failure is bad. Such a limiting belief. What is failure? Like, who made the metric anyway of what was failure and what wasn't?
Great point.
That's subjective. But failure is bad? Really? Is it? Like, the things I have failed at in my life have only led me to learn something, so I do it differently, better next time. Or maybe some failed relationships that have broken my heart. Well, if I hadn't been through those, I would still be maybe with the wrong person rather than have waited for this like amazing man I'm now married to. So, you know, and we only learn and innovate really through failure. So there is such limiting belief. Failure is bad. I'm always challenging that one with my clients. Another limiting belief, I won't cope. Really? Like, you really know that, do you? You really know you won't cope? Of course you're going to cope. You might not like something, but you will always cope. Always. And actually, the fear of I won't cope is such a crazy one, because actually, when we think about something we're worried about doing, that fear is worse and more toxic than the kind of nervousness we experience once we're in it. Once we're in it, adrenaline kicks in, and we kind of find a way through. And then afterwards go, oh God, I'm glad that was over. I thought I wasn't going to cope. What we don't say to ourselves is, oh, hold on a minute. I said I wasn't going to cope, and look at me, I coped. I was lying to myself. So I won't cope is a big one. Another limiting belief, I think, is this belief that life should be smooth, which is sort of similar to the fear of failure thing, or failure is bad thing, because actually, like, I don't know anyone who's had a smooth path. And like, we sort of imagine that people with loads of money or privilege are having it smooth. Well, we've just all watched The Crown, right? I mean, what a horrible life being royal is. Who'd want that? That's not smooth. It isn't smooth. Life's not smooth. Limiting belief. like, I've had people say to me, I've always got a problem. There must be something wrong with me. And it's like, well, no, these are just challenges that life's bringing you. So you grow and expand and evolve. So, and I suppose I mean, there's so many limiting beliefs, but I'm trying to sort of bracket them into their themes. Yeah. The last one, probably the biggie, is other people will judge me. Like if we're busy in our lives doing everything in order to not be judged, that is an exhausting. That's like constant, like was just constant kind of hyper vigilance and hyper kind of managing managing our reputation, I suppose. Other people will judge me is it really holds people back from just living their lives.
Yeah, so that's a big
those one. Are the sorts of limiting beliefs I come across frequently. And how do I know them? Because I've lived them, I've experienced them, I've parked most of them. Doesn't mean they don't revisit, but I know what to do with the little buggers today. They are perennial, they're pervasive, they're toxic, and they're not true. They're not true.
And I'm glad you pointed out that sometimes they might pop up in your head. I mean, I get stuff popping up in my head. I just
of course.
deal with them a lot better, and that they can go an awful lot quicker because I've used strategy. So I'm glad you've mentioned that as well.
And well, I think they don't drive me anymore.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not. I'm not rooted in them. They're not driving me anymore. That doesn't mean that they don't nip in the sidecar occasionally, and I don't notice them for a while and think, "Oh, what are you doing back in my life?" Yeah, it's different. The power they have is shifted.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important to make a point here that there's also, and I point this out quite regularly, that there's sometimes the misconception that so-called perceived confident people or happy people have no negative emotions. That's completely false. We all have it. It just, when those people you've seen perhaps on stage who are doing these really confident things, now we won't use Tony because he's done it for 43 years, so he's probably not going to get fear when he goes out on stage now, but I've heard people like Jennifer Lopez, for example, and various celebrities say, I still get nervous when I go on stage. I sometimes get this imposter syndrome. They say to themselves like, oh, am I enough? Am I in the right place here? So that's a really, really good point. And I wanted to lead on to just say about people do have fear, and fear is a perfectly natural thing to experience, or negative emotions are perfectly normal to experience in the head, but it's just about how we deal with it differently.
Right. And we don't have to believe what they're saying.
Absolutely.
It's the amount of attachment we have to those feelings. If we can observe them and go, oh, look, there's fear visiting. There's fear telling me, Jennifer Lopez, that I'm not good enough to go on stage. I've just sung at the inauguration, but I'm not good enough. Like if we can go, oh, look, there it is. There's that bit. There's that part of me having its little moment. Then that's one thing. Going to it and agreeing with it and kind of attaching to it and saying to it, tell me that again. I didn't quite get it all down. Well, that's a surefire way to not go on stage and stop being Jennifer Lopez. To notice it and go, oh, there it is.
Yeah, totally. And I love how you talk about that in your first book as well. So I definitely recommend giving Jo's first book a read, Flying for Beginners, where you talk about that voice and the separate parts of your body, the inner child's voice and the inner critic's voice, and how you actually look at that voice from the outside.
Yeah. Give it some, like, it's not a process of like pushing all that rubbish away, but it's just like, oh, hello, how, here you are, there you are, what do you need? But I'm not going to do what you say. It's just about managing that voice, because then, that we're in the driving seat of our lives rather than fear.
Yeah, I love it. So then the next question I was going to ask was about some of the causes of, and you were kind of going on to it a little bit, but what are some of the main causes you find for people's lack of self-love for themselves?
Lack of self-love. Well,
I mean, there can be obviously like we touched on the last questions, there can be so many, there's thousands, but like some of the few most common probably ones you experience in a bucket.
Trauma, childhood trauma. That is going to do for someone self-love in an instant. And you know, I will say really strongly and firmly right now, if you've experienced trauma or neglect or abuse as a child, or as an adult, say you've been in a war situation, or there's been like a major car crash you were involved in, or a tsunami, or anything like, you know, anything like terrifying where you had no power, it's likely you're experiencing trauma, and it's likely you're going to need specialist therapeutic help for that. And coaching comes sort of after that process, right? But that does need to be dealt with. So a lack of self-love, you know, a lot of that can be rooted in being brought up by people who also couldn't self-love, who were brought up by people who also couldn't you know, but you can break generational trauma, definitely. Anyone can do that. So a lack of self-love is definitely rooted in that. But I think particularly our British culture, or any kind of heavily traditionally religious culture, there's a lot of messaging around us not being good enough, about us being flawed. I mean, the Garden of Eden, right, is all about original sin, that we are actually born bad and need a savior. And, you know, I'm not arguing for or against any particular religion or worldview, but I am saying that messaging of you're bad, you're not good enough, means that you're probably very unlikely to think, oh, I quite like myself. You know, I'm quite good. I think I'll, you know, buy myself a cup of tea, or treat myself to a massage, or say nice things to myself. Like, we're taught by our culture to judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, compare ourselves to other people, believe we're not good enough, believe we have to fight and grab and grasp to get ahead. Like, ahead of what, who, why, where do we think we're going? Life's now. So I think, you know, we live in a toxic soup. It's very difficult. It's like counterintuitive to the culture we live in, to be nice to ourselves, to be gentle, to kind of change what we're listening to. But I think it's absolutely key. So I think we learn lack of self-love. Our culture teaches us lack of self-love. The other thing, very pragmatic thing, is busyness. So many people are caught up in working too hard, trying to make their homes look perfect, trying to kind of pack every experience a child could possibly ever have into childhoods, keeping their cars perfectly clean, you know, all, like, just this treadmill of busyness. And we don't stop and just think and just be with ourselves. Like, just stop, just spend like some time looking out the window thinking. We don't do that anymore. And, you know, how do I show my husband I love him? I spend time with him. Like, I listen to him. I might make him a cup of tea. We might have a kutch. You know, I might say, what do you want to watch on the telly tonight? He'll be like, shall we watch The Chase on catch up? I'm like, total guilty pleasure. Love it. You know, or we might watch a nature documentary, or, you know, we talk to each other, right? We ask each other, you know, my 12-year-old, she'll often come and say, I just need some time with you. So that's how people feel loved, and by people, you know, by the people in their lives, is we spend time with them. Why are we not spending time with ourselves? You know, I learned transcendental meditation a few years ago, which means I have to twice a day spend 20 minutes going in. And it has served me, Johnny, beyond anything else I've ever done. Just that stopping, just retreating from the world, just coming in, being with me. And transcendental meditation means you're sort of being with the wider consciousness. I'm not really sure what it is, but, you know, you're being with like the whole of life, the back of life, the engine room. You go into the engine room for a while and just and that to me is the biggest act of self-love I think I do on a daily basis. Being with me, being with you. 2 lots of 20 minutes. Love that. That's a great idea. Yeah, I've definitely worked with people and spoken with people who've reached out and said,
we can get caught on what I like to know as autopilot mode, where we're just not even thinking about what we're doing, even though it's not necessarily serving us. And it kind of leads me on to what I was going to cover next, really, or the final bit, really, was that we can get caught so into autopilot mode that we've not taken that time out to think, okay, actually, is this working for me, or am I just on this constant repeat of, I mean, in my earlier 20s, it used to be busy going to work. I'd go to the gym, so I had some healthy weekends, heavy drinking with the guys. Like, it was a good social life, but it's kind of that repeat, but it wasn't making me that happy. And lots of people have these lives like that I certainly work with, kind of doing the same things, having the same bad conversations with themselves and other people, and just not even taking that time out. What do I need? What's going to look after me right now? So I'm really glad you pointed that one out. Certainly. So the final one I was going to, so kind of leads on nicely from that, because I know obviously I value your time. So I'll just leave it on this final question, is that I'm a big believer, especially when someone comes to me, is looking at their habits. Now, we've got habits and we've got actions as how I look at it. So actions, I believe when you take like more courageous action, you'll become confident when you start getting results. You don't always get the results, but you take more actions and you try things. But there's habits. So what the habits, what we do over and over again, as Aristotle said, the cliche, but excellence is not an act, but a habit. And I totally always sunk in with me. So I always look at people's habits in terms of, right, and this is coming out of autopilot mode a little bit. Okay. So what are you doing? How are you talking to myself? I don't talk to myself. I'll ask, when do you write nice things down about yourself? And it's like, no, it's like, could that be a new habit? And it's funny what works best for someone. So in terms of some good habits you find, you mentioned about 2 lots of 20 minutes with yourself. Is there anything else you'd recommend for people to really help improve their self-love for themselves?
Definitely. Well, I mean, I really am a great believer in the power of the ritual, which is very similar to what you and Aristotle, you're in great company,
Me and him
say,
came up with it
and many
together.
other. Did you? Was that your former life?
Yeah.
Maybe you were Aristotle in a former life, Johnny. Oh, quite chuffed with that. So the power of the ritual, the things we repeatedly do. And it also leaves us feeling very safe and held if we've got a ritual. Excuse the banging. I think that was one of my daughters having a bit of a strop. So the power of the ritual. And so there are kind of physical rituals, and then there are mental rituals. So the physical ones, for me, I get up and I do a little bit of yoga stretching and I do my meditation, and then I do another one in the evening. I came to that kicking and screaming. It took me a long time to establish it as an actual practice, because I wanted to be back. I wanted to be out and in the world and getting distracted. But I've kind of managed to, I clean my teeth twice a day. I also meditate twice a day. Like it's a thing. I also make sure I get some fresh air every day. Unless I'm really ill, I will be outside for at least half an hour. Air is so important, especially in the winter. And some sort of exercise as well, be that a bit of cycling or a walk or some yoga, or if you want to go and play tennis or whatever, but some exercise, like, those are kind of daily rituals. And also making sure I put good food inside of me. You and I were talking before we recorded this about you're vegan, I'm not vegan. But, I'm a massive believer in, packing loads of vegetables into my diet. If I do eat meat, it's like organic, and it's because we're able to afford that, and it's not, it's not full of loads of nasty chemicals, or I'll buy it, nice eggs rather than the cheap ones, things like that. Now, I know everyone can't do that, but, we can all be mindful about what we're putting in. But then there are thought habits. And we have to also be aware of what we're putting in to our minds. So I've always got an inspiring book on the go. So some sort of book about spirituality, or some sort of coaching book, or some sort of mindset book, or positive psychology. It's not there are piles of books by my bed, always have been, always will be. There's no point in tidying them up because I just pull them back off all the shelves again. Like I like to have them there, like little friends.
Fellow
and there was
book lover like me, yeah.
Oh, just love them. And really, they really have to be actual books. Like I've got a bit of Kindle stuff, but I like to have a thing I can smell and touch.
Good for the eyes as well. Yeah, definitely.
Better for the eyes, yeah. And so I'll have a novel on the go, but I will also have 1 or 2, sometimes 3 different types of philosophy books, or like I say, spiritual, whatever sort of books on the go. And I put that stuff into my mind. I remind myself of what my soul knows that my head can sometimes hijack. It's really important when you read books like that. You drop down into your soul and it goes, remember me? You think, oh yeah, hello. I got so lost in my head, and there you are. So I find reading books like that really, really great ritual, really great habit. And the other thing is I call it first thought, second thought. In fact, I just popped this on my Instagram today, although I called it something different. First thought. Often our first thoughts are autopilot, amygdala, reptilian brain firing, and they fire with fear. So usually our first thought is one of fear. I won't be able to do it. I'm not good enough. I won't cope. You know, those limiting beliefs we talked about before. But if we stop and go, okay, that was my first thought. What's my second thought? What does my executive brain say about this? What does my wise self say? What does my God or my higher power or the universe have to say about this if you want to take it further? But you can just be like, what's my front brain saying? And often that will be, well, maybe we need to break this down into chunks. Maybe we need to ask for some help. Maybe now's not the right time. Maybe you need a rest. Maybe you could just have a go and not worry about whether you get it perfect or not. And that first thought, second thought habit, I'll often get my clients to kind of pop it on their phones, you know, like a little reminder on here. Maybe twice a day, have a reminder pop up, first thought, second thought, and just stop. Okay, what thought have I just been believing? Oh, that wasn't very nice. What can I say to myself instead? So there's some physical habits in there, but there's also we must remember that we are a mind body. We're not a body and a mind. We are a mind body, or body mind. It's one thing. It's one organism. They're not separate. They all do the same thing. You've only got to remember a scary movie and hear you and feel your chest pounding to go, oh yeah, no, they are the same. It's the same system.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about training, looking at those thoughts again, and just the importance of that, because of the survival mind comes in and it puts in all this fear. Like we said, everyone experiences it. But then it's your job you've got more power than you think to actually train it and redirect it. So I really like what you said about the second thought. And then I'm a believer that if you're not regularly doing this again and again and again, that negative survival mind is just going to completely take over. And that's when we lose all kind of respect for ourselves and self-love, because that's completely in control. So I love what you said about the second thought. I love the way you put that. So thank you.
Well, confidence is a muscle, right? And if I want a six-pack, I got to be doing something tummy-wise every day. I'm kind of over that now, but you know, in my 30s, I probably did want something like that. And then I had children, and what was the point? But if you want a six-pack, or I want strong thighs or whatever, I have to use them every day. Yeah, I have to exercise every day. It's the same with our confidence. It's a muscle. Exercise it daily, and you won't drown in fear and self-doubt. You'll have you've got a fighting chance at having a good day.
Awesome. Love that bit of advice. So, Jo, thank you very much for being with us today. I really
great to see you, Johnny.
Appreciate your value, and you know, considering you've got to homeschool, you've got to coach, you've got to do many things. So thank you very much. You're
welcome.
I mean, you know, you've given us a lot of information. So just for people listening or watching this, where can they find you?
Oh, my website. So that's Jo-Emerson with 1M.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. I don't think I'm anywhere else. I probably am somewhere else. I forgot. But I'm definitely not on TikTok, because I've been told by my children I'm not allowed on there.
I'm not on
Apparently
it.
I'm too old. too old for TikTok. To be honest, I've never even seen it, but I'm sure it's brilliant. But anyway, I'm on all of those. And if anyone's interested, they can just, my email address is on my website, can send me an email. Also on my website, there's like a free little coaching tool that you can use, and there's an ebook you can download, and there's loads of blogs, helpful stuff on there. So come and enjoy.
Yeah, and Jo's also got her first book, Flying for Beginners, which you can see on the site, and Amazon where I got it. So that's the very simple, not over long, complicated book that I'd highly recommend to explain things like the inner critic that we've been talking about today and how you can potentially manage it. So that's where you can find Jo. So thank you very much for listening and watching today, everybody, and I will catch you in the next episode.